Good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you're joining us today. Welcome to this edition of the Africa Football Business Show. This is actually episode 26, and we are glad to welcome all of you today to this very important discourse with two very amazing professionals in the field of entrepreneurship in sports. Actually, the theme of our discussion today is entrepreneurship and innovation in football. The Africa Football Business Show is brought to you by the Football Foundation for Africa. And just take a moment to recognize our partners. That is OTB Africa, Palma Sports, CBeyond Leadership Forum, and iSportland. As I mentioned, we have two excellent professionals in Kupakwashe Mukurumbira and Professor Maureen Florence, joining us from Zimbabwe and Brazil, respectively. I'll just take a moment to read through their bios, if because this is very important for us. We have a very distinguished guest with here today. So we'll start with Kupakwashe Desmond Mukurumbira. He's the founder of Dominion Sport Trust, a sports entrepreneurship organization. Dominion Sports trains sports business leaders, entrepreneurs, and business professionals to start and structure and scale sports ideas and grow revenue for sports organizations. The organization was established to address the problem of slow commercialization and professionalization of sports in Africa. His purpose and passion is to develop the next generation of African sports entrepreneurs, sports startups, athlete entrepreneurs, and sports business leaders on the continent. Mr. Mukurumbira is also Kupakwashe is also a global safe sport expert who serves as an advisory board member for UNICEF UK initiative on safeguarding children in sport, Safe Sport International, and Safe Sport Africa. He was recently appointed a FIFA Guardian independent review panel member and FIFA Safeguarding Diploma facilitator. He possesses unique insight and understanding into the safe sport ecosystem and has worked on several projects with national, regional, continental, and international sports organization. So welcome to the show, Kupakwashe.
Thank you, Brian.
Our second guest, all the way from Brazil, actually our first guest from South America, is Professor Maureen Flores. She is a postdoctoral researcher and consultant in an area of interest, and her area of interest is innovation and the impact of technology in sport. In the private market, she was LATAM's representative for Muda Group of companies and consultant for the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, and the United Nations for the environmental area. Due to her background in public policy, she worked for over 15 years with private and non-governmental companies in the development and implementation of ICT policies. Today, she contributes to the media with an international career as a sports tech writer and supports several countries, sports federations, and companies to develop sports innovation ecosystems. She also was the sustainability manager of the 2016 Summer Olympics. Professor Flores holds a DSc in Public Policy Strategy and Development from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro and the Università degli Studi di Siena in Italy. She holds a master's in environmental policy from Bard College, USA, and specialization courses at George Washington University in Washington and St. Arthur's, Cambridge, in the UK. Professor Florence is recognized as an international speaker and writer on sports innovation. Welcome to the show, Maureen.
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
So after the introductions, I'll go straight to you, Maureen. Maybe you can just share a little bit more and add on to what I've already said. And yeah, what's your interest in sports? How did you come into sports and football as part of the introduction?
Well, Brian, I think you said it all. But what happened is that as a researcher, my area of interest is innovation. And specifically, I target the impact of technology in sports. I believe that countries like Kenya and Brazil, sports can be a drive for development. So I'm here to, share my ideas and opinions and listen to yours.
Excellent. What about you, Kupakwashe? Actually, the name Kupakwashe means God sent. So welcome and thank you very much. If there's anything you can add to the introduction, especially your interest in football and sports.
Thank you, Brian. So for me, I believe sport has the power to change the world, like what the great Nelson Mandela once said. And my passion really is to develop the next generation of sport business leaders, sport entrepreneurs, and other entrepreneurs in Africa. I believe Africa has the talent, Africa has the potential to become one of the biggest to build one of the biggest sporting economies in the world. So my real passion then is around making sure that we develop the next generation of leaders who would impact the continent of Africa and use sport as a tool for development, as a tool for economic and social prosperity of the continent of Africa. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll continue with you, Kupakwashe, and we want to start with the basics, really, because especially here in Africa, it's very rare to hear people speaking about entrepreneurship, innovation in the sports space, in the football space. So, if we can start with the basics, and that is definition, how do you define entrepreneurship in the context of sports and football?
Okay, so for me, it's a simple definition, really. It's football entrepreneurship for me, because we're discussing football, is the process of really developing and selling sport products and services. Then, in terms of innovation, you're basically looking at the process of creating value to existing sport products and sport services, and obviously solving the different unique problems that the football ecosystem faces. So it's basically around developing products and services, as well as the process of really creating value from existing um, services and products that are around the football ecosystem.
Great. What can you add on to these, Maureen? Of course, we know Brazil is one of the most innovative football teams, at least on the pitch. But having you here also gives us the confidence that the same also happens off the pitch. How would you define entrepreneurship and innovation in the context of football? And if you can also help us to differentiate between innovation and entrepreneurship.
Well, I think that innovation and entrepreneurship is not different in football than there is any organization. So, shortly, I would say that an entrepreneur is an agent of change, a person who assumes the risks of the business. An entrepreneurship is a special collection of skills an entrepreneur possesses. So, if I have to define innovation, I will not innovate. I will stick with economics literature and the definition of Schumpeter, an Austrian economist who, during the first half of the 20th century, coined the term creative destruction to describe the process which innovation causes in a free market economy to evolve. So, creative destruction occurs when innovations make long-standing arrangements obsolete, freeing resources to be employed elsewhere, leading to greater economic efficiency. To put it simply, innovation can lead to higher productivity, creating value, as the kappa of, I have to get your name properly, Kupakwashe, like Kupakwashe said when he mentioned about creating value. So I just put an economic literature around what he said. He said very well. So I think that the main difference between innovation and entrepreneurship is that an entrepreneur, you can have entrepreneurship without innovating. However, an innovator must have at least some, entrepreneurship in order to innovate. I think that's the main difference. If football is not different than that.
Excellent. And why is it critical? You just talked about creative destruction. Especially, we all understand the football context, very little changes in the football space as we know it, or in the sports space. But why is it critical for us to have entrepreneurship and innovation in football sports management?
Well, I think we have to make it a difference. What I said, what is innovation and what is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship in sports organization require a solid management and governance policies. Why is that? Because entrepreneurship in a sports organization, like any other organization, it's top down, not bottom up. But when you're talking about very small business or startups, then it's something different. Then we're talking about an entrepreneur with all the skills. It's the person who locate and exploit opportunities. That's why we need them so much. Because when more entrepreneurs we have on the sports scene, more chances we have to shake up the system.
Excellent. Globalization 2.0, as people call it, has had a significant impact on the football industry, with sports organization facing increased competitiveness within the industry and also from other sports disciplines. For example, there are other, it's like a competition for investors, for funds, and all this. How can innovation help these organizations to remain competitive and sustainable?
Well, to be sustainable, it can be competitive. Are you asking me? Okay.
Yes.
So we have, first of all, we have to understand what Globalization 2.0 is about. It's basically a shift from west to east, and how it impacts football in this case. Here we're talking about football. It impacts everything, but how it impacts football? Well, China has been growing for the last 30 years. Their GDP has been growing for the last 30 years. It represents, it represents a shift in investments. They changed the investments landscape in football. La Liga, Premier League, Deutsche League, they all moved. They shift investments to China. Last year, when Chinese government announced that they will stop investing in football, they changed the landscape again. So another point that we have to think about Globalization 2.0 is that the economic literature shows that there will increase in middle class in emerging markets. But most of this growth will come from, again, Asia. So it's a big shift from west to east. And that will change the landscape of investments again, because change the profile of the audience. So we have to follow closely and adapt. There is no right answer, wrong answer for that right now. We have to really follow that close.
Very interesting. And just to bring you in, Kupakwashe, as we look at Africa, because it's the Africa Football Business Show, we've heard from Professor Maureen Flores the impact of globalization, the shift from west to east, investments moving towards the east. The other thing she has mentioned is the growing middle class, something that is also talked about here in Africa. There's a growing middle class, but still, especially when it comes to sports, when it comes to football, the continent lags. It's even very difficult, like I said at the onset, to hear this was entrepreneurship, innovation in the football space. We don't have investors, as it were, in the football space. Why is this the case, and how can we promote entrepreneurship and innovation in football?
All right, thank you, Brian. So one of the biggest challenges that we have, in Africa, in terms of football entrepreneurship and in sport entrepreneurship in general, the first key thing is the lack of knowledge and education around sport entrepreneurship. So over the last week, I was training about 20 leaders on what we call rugby entrepreneurship in Africa. So when I said I'm going to present on rugby entrepreneurship, everyone looked at me and was like, what's that? Okay. After I presented and started explaining to them, a lady who had been in rugby for almost 20 years indicated that he had never had the term rugby entrepreneurship. But this is someone who was operating in a space, in a key strategic leadership position, and is responsible for running an organization that is supposed to drive innovation within that specific space. So that's the general, from my interactions with many Africans in different sporting organizations, the knowledge of what exactly sport entrepreneurship is not there. So that's a major challenge that we have to first deal with, for people to know how exactly do we draw the commercial value out of sport. Because if we are empowered with that knowledge, we'll then be able to really influence change within Africa. Number two, the other challenge that we generally have in as far as understanding the entrepreneurship space in Africa is the mindset is different. So if you meet an individual who's running a club in Europe, you meet an individual who's running a club in Africa, their mindsets are totally different. One is running an entity that he believes is profitable and is supposed to generate revenue. The other one is just running an entity in a normal way. So what we have then to do as Africa, for us to really make impact in the sport entrepreneurship space, is to change the mindset, to look at these organizations not just as sporting organizations where you play, you enjoy sport, you participate in a league, but to look at them as business entities that can really make profit. Then number three, the key issue then again is the issue of the skill set in as far as sport entrepreneurship and football entrepreneurship in this case is concerned. So when you look at the level of skills that you have, we did a survey in my organization of the general skill sets within football organizations. Particularly, we're looking at clubs. You would notice that most of the individuals that end up running sport organizations or football organizations are not skilled with basic football or sport entrepreneurship skills. Therefore, to expect those to then run these organizations in a profitable way or in an entrepreneurial way will be expecting a miracle way, where you're expecting to produce results where they really cannot be produced because the right skill sets are not there. So I'll tell you a very interesting story. I met a gentleman who was a former football player through our masterclass. We taught him how to be an entrepreneur, though he had played football at the highest league and was close to some of the richest football players who could have been investors to his project. He actually didn't realize it in that manner. So after training him for just 5 days, he came and said, okay, I never realized that by being a football player, I'm actually an entrepreneur in my own right. And the skills that you have just given me by telling me this, I'm now able to unlock the value of my network. So the skill set is a challenge. And then obviously leadership is key. Okay, entrepreneurs are leaders by nature, as the professor rightfully indicated. And we need in Africa to really, embrace good leadership that is governed by good policies, good ethics. I'm sure you follow football and you know that of late we have had many corruption cases, and that alone makes the environment not good for anyone to want to invest, like what the good professors was saying, in as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. So we really need to make sure that we educate, empower people so that they get to know about this, and we change the narrative so that Africa becomes the hub of football entrepreneurship in the world.
Thank you, Kupakwashe. Very pertinent points raised there. You mentioned knowledge, mindset, skill set, leadership. Of course, these challenges or problems that you have, if we look at them from another perspective, represent opportunities for us. And like from an educational perspective, I can say you as Kupakwashe Mukurumbira and Dominion Sports are already looking at this challenge of knowledge and skill set and addressing it through Dominion Sports. But perhaps you can just give us a rundown of some of the other opportunities of types of entrepreneurship that people can explore. You know, last week here on the Africa Football Business Show, we were talking about football agents. And when you move across Africa, you find a lot of people just want to be football agents. But really, there is a lot that can be done within the space. From your experience, from the coaching and the people you encounter, what other avenues are there for entrepreneurs within the sports space? Kupakwashe.
Thank you, Brian. So there are many opportunities. So we're living in very interesting times in as far as football business is concerned, because there's a growth of opportunities everywhere in as far as football entrepreneurship is concerned. So there are different forms of football entrepreneurs that you have. You have what we call the football club entrepreneurs. This is your typical clubs that are run by professionals, and then these grow to become brands. It's typically where we have your Manchester Uniteds and these big clubs. So in Africa, when you look at clubs, obviously, the biggest opportunities that are there is to really develop these clubs to become entities that can make profit. So we do have the demographic dividend to that effect. If we really structure our clubs properly, we can harness them, make profit out of those. Then we obviously have football technology entrepreneurs who obviously harness the different aspects of technology, athlete performance, athlete engagement, and this is a very key aspect, like you indicated, in terms of globalization. Technology is obviously at the center of globalization, and football has not been spared in as far as the advancement in technology is concerned. So it's interesting to note that over the last 8 months, over 8.5 billion has been invested in sports technology alone by investors around the world, specifically in Europe, North America, South America, Middle East, and the Oceania. But when you look at Africa, it's not the same. Why? Because we haven't yet started developing technologies which will really help us address our own challenges in our own way. So that's, for me, is one of the biggest opportunities that we currently have in Africa, to leverage technology and really make an impact. Then outside that, we have other forms of football entrepreneurs, individuals like you who have foundations that are trying to address different social issues. So we call those football development or football social entrepreneurs, individuals who are using football to address different social issues. So these are typically your foundations, and we've seen some of these mushrooming in Africa, and of course, that's a big opportunities because we have different challenges that we have, and sport has the power to be used to address these key issues. Then outside that, we also have what we call football media entrepreneurs. These are typically your content creators who buy and sell content. In Africa, we only have one giant who literally controls the entire ecosystem. That's your super sport. But that's, again, with the advent of social media platforms, it's a big an area of opportunity where if companies are established around that, we could have other players coming into the ecosystem and really growing the ecosystem so that the ecosystem becomes bigger, broader, and serving a larger market. And then lastly, one of the interesting or the fascinating types of entrepreneurs that we have is what we call this the football investor entrepreneurs. These are individuals who come in, invest in football, whether it's a technology company, whether it's a club, to get a return. So just a day ago, I was negotiating a deal of an African guy trying to buy a club in Europe. So the biggest question that I had was, why is this guy wanting to buy a club in Europe and not in Africa? And the answer was very simple. The systems that we have do not yet attract the level of investment that the prof was indicating. So again, that's an opportunity for us to really build our system so that people begin to invest in Africa, so that Africa really grows and cements her place in the global sport ecosystem. And then lastly, we have what we call football player entrepreneurs. So when you look at an individual like Cristiano Ronaldo, He's more than just a football player. He's an entrepreneur in his own right. He's developed over 10 products around his name alone. In Africa, we have these top football players, but you really can pick one who has developed a particular brand based on his own brand, leveraging his own brand. So that again is an opportunity that we have to train our athletes to know that though they are professionals, they are equally in their own right entrepreneurs. They can leverage their brands and then grow to become entrepreneurs. So those are some of the different forms of entrepreneurs that you have and the opportunities that I think are existing in Africa. I'm very excited when I speak about this because I've seen and trained individuals who are entering into some of these spaces, and they're beginning to, realize that Africa really can make a difference and people can grow and generate wealth out of this. So I really love and I'm passionate about this particular space because it's where I live, breathe, and do almost everything on a daily basis. Thanks, Brian.
Excellent, Kupakwashe. I will not let you go. Just to carry on with your passion there. There is a question here that is linked to the last point you mentioned about athletes. This is a question from Anuel Wile and Denge. He said, "Have you ever any innovative practical experience on how we could change the mindset of sports athletes, recognizing that they are not mere sports people but entrepreneurship?" Any words on that before we bring in Professor Maureen Flores?
Okay, I think the basic of becoming an entrepreneur in the modern mode, you learn it. So I wasn't born an entrepreneur. I started Dominion Sport not because I automatically was born an entrepreneur. I was taught how to become an entrepreneur by mentors, by individuals that I looked up to, and they trained me, and then knew that these are the opportunities that are there. So typically, if you're looking at African players, what really they need to be given is information to say, okay, if you're going, clubs, football federations, particular, have a key role to play in as far as training our athletes to become entrepreneurs. So by the time they get into professional leagues, they should have been taught that, okay, when you get into this space, you are an entrepreneur in your own right, and this is what you're supposed to. This is how you can leverage your brand to generate revenue, to make money, to get endorsements, to get sponsorship. So it's very important for us to invest in training our athletes so that they know that aspect before they become professionals.
Thanks. Bringing in Professor Maureen Flores, we know, of course, Brazil has given us some of the top talents that we've watched, and some of them are entrepreneurs now, including the other Ronaldo, Nazario, the number 9. What's your take on these, Professor Maureen Flores? And as we ask you that, we know something else that Africa perhaps shares with Brazil is the football academies, and these usually have flourished with the expectation of providing labor, mainly for Europe, but also for the local market. But the challenge perhaps we have here in Africa, most of these academies have developed more or less independently and without much support from the systems that are there. From your experience, and how do you think we can better support football academies? As Kupakwashe mentioned, this is just one of the areas or one of the types of entrepreneurs that we have. Maureen.
Well, before going to the football academy, I would like to say something about the athletes, elite athletes as entrepreneurs. I think that the best example in the world doesn't come from football, comes from NBA. The NBA has the best examples how they invested in their players to make them their ambassadors and make them to understand themselves as a luxury product. And after they do that, and they do that with the academy, In fact, they do that with Bocconi University in Italy. It's important for them that their players to perceive themselves as a luxury product. It's a fantastic program, and I believe in that. I would like to say that what happened is that in emerging markets like our markets, sometimes the sports organizations must occupy a space left to the open by the public policy. And policymakers must occupy a space left by sports organization. What I'm saying is that the sports organization must be proactive in organizing educational initiatives to fulfill what public policy did not provide. I think this is an important point. So, going back to football academies, I think football academies is a very complex matter because it's very simple and very complicated at the same time. Well, in my opinion, professional management is crucial to all organizations. Football and football academies are not different. What I would like to talk about it is this culture of profit and non-profit. What happened is that a non-profit organization is not a mandate to lose money. On the contrary, running a non-profit organization is a mandate to run a sustainable organization and not going cap in hand. That differs from profit, but does not differ from a positive cash flow. Also, I think that in Africa, in Brazil, and South America, in the Caribbean, and even in some countries in Asia, we have to understand to work together. We have to learn how to do that. Grassroots operations are a vital pillar of football development. Their CEO must be able to understand a business model, otherwise they will fail. And they have to learn to work together in order to make them strong, powerful. I like the idea of inviting local universities to develop capacity building programs, even work with sports organization or the sports entrepreneur. So to put some academic stuff on that, like the NBA are doing with Bocconi with some small organizations. I know that some of these managers do not think they need that. Believe me, I know that. But it should not stop those interested in raising the bar of their operations. What we are talking about here, we're talking about raising the bar to improve standards. So at the end of the day, we are talking about education, education, and education.
Very true. Really interesting there, Professor Flores, working with the education sector to really, how can I put it, to raise the standards of how these grassroots football organizations are run. This is something that is not happening across the continent. I don't know, just to bring you in, Kupakwashe, what's been your experience in this area of especially football academies? Because it's really huge in Africa. You know, every other person you meet wants to start a football academy, for different reasons.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, academies have been mushrooming. So that the painful side for me, in as far as Africa is concerned, with academies is like rightfully the professor was indicating is, firstly, the management part of it. Really, the skill set and the knowledge is not there. So someone starts an academy, you go and ask them, okay, what's your business model like? How do you intend to sustain this? They really can't explain that to you. So they'll gather talent, train young boys, but at the end of the day, there's really no system or structure for the business to grow, to create pathways for these guys to grow and probably end up in the top leagues if that's even the goal. So that management aspect is key. Then secondly, when you look at some of the most successful academies within Africa, they are not African academies per se. They are academies that come from Europe. There's the Right to Dream Academy, which is one of the popular most popular academies. It's an individual who comes from Europe. They establish a facility, they run a facility, they then take talent, put the talent within the European system and benefit. And the difference then being the model that they use makes them successful and makes them easily access the European market and then grow their own personal brand. But at a local level, really, the skills, the knowledge of how to really establish these academies to become impactful business entities, either doing it as a social enterprise, like what the professor was saying, was a profitable business most of the times, is currently a huge gap or a thorn in the flesh for us in Africa, which we should work on really building. So, like she rightfully indicated, again, we need to work together, build partnerships, see how best we can learn from each other and leverage each other's strength and really grow the football entrepreneurship within the academy space. So I'll give you an example of one of the academies that I'm one of the individuals that again that I met who was running an academy. I asked them a simple question: what's your business model? They couldn't answer. I asked them, okay, where exactly do you want to take these players? They said, okay, wherever comes I can give. Then I asked, do you have a strategic plan? The answer was no. Do you have a Facebook page? The answer was no. So I was then asking, how are you going to market this? Because this is a business that you're running. So from there, you could actually pick, okay, this guy is running a thing, an academy, but he doesn't have basics of knowing how to run this as a business or as a social enterprise. And then that then becomes important for us if we really want to make sure that these academy entrepreneurs that are there become successful and produce the quality type of players that we want to see developed in Africa and in the football ecosystem in general.
Excellent. Just to bring you back again, Maureen, from both of you, of especially from Kupakwashe's comments, these academies space, for me, or in my view, what I've observed, they're passion driven. You just find somebody who was once a footballer or interested in football, and probably thinks he has an eye for talent, starting a football academy. And they don't understand that what they have done is entrepreneurial. And this leads to the challenges that you have mentioned. And Professor Maureen, to borrow a bit from your experience in public policy strategy and implementation, how do you think we can better manage this space? What role can governments and sports organizations play to ensure that these academies actually contribute to the social and economic development of the countries in which they exist?
Well, I think that first of all, football must be perceived as a business and an export business, like you export fruits and vegetables and grains and flowers or servers or etc. Brazil is the country with the highest number of players flying to Europe or over the world. So we are the largest exporter of football player in the world. It means an impact on the balance of payment. In the case of Brazil, it doesn't mean it does not represent 10% or 50%. And of course, it's not going to represent a large amount of large share of Kenya's or any African country export agenda, but it represents something. And then policymakers start looking at it differently. That's why I think that we also have to liaison with corporations that are exporters in order to develop something. So what I'm saying is that, first of all, we need to make policymakers understand that we are talking about exports. We are talking about a macroeconomic policy, and exporting talents represent an increase in the balance, a positive increase in the balance of payment. Is an export like any other one. The second thing is that, of course, it's the role of the government to influence a good management, compliance, pay taxes and everything like that. So I think that's the first two things that is important. But also, I took a note of something what Kupakwashe said here that I think it's important. When we're talking about football academies, we are talking about we're talking about a non-profit, sometimes it's a social work. They needs management anyway. Second, we're talking about a profit, sometimes a franchise. That's the case, what he mentioned about, Barcelona or, many different countries that have franchises all over the world. It requires management. Sometimes someone just got a franchise because they have enough money to do that, or he is passionate, he spent all his life savings and an initiative that will fail. So doesn't matter what kind of football you have, a football academy, profit, non-profit, franchise, non-franchise, you need a business model. You need to know what you're running about. You have to understand that you are part of the export business. You are in business. Maybe the next Cristiano Ronaldo, it's playing your academy. You don't know. And you'll never know if you don't run that as a business. That's what I would like to say.
Excellent. Very strong points there. And going back to what you said again, Maureen, education is really, really vital when it comes to sports entrepreneurship. I just now like to go a bit into your personal experiences, especially you, Kupakwashe, who is running a sports entrepreneurship education program. What has been your experience in running this program? In Zimbabwe or other countries. What's the uptake, and are you seeing the impact? Any success stories you'd like to share with us?
Thanks, Brian. So when we started, obviously, if you're an entrepreneur, the first part people will say you're crazy. That's the first thing that people will say. So we started our company in 2016, and it's been interesting because we have trained over 450 sport business leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes across the sub-Saharan Africa. Specifically, some of the countries that we've worked with, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia, Nigeria, and some within the Asian communities, Nepal in particular. So we've pretty much been able to work with individuals from a different pattern. It's been a very interesting journey so far because we've seen positive impact in many ways. So I'll tell you a story of one of the football players. He came through, we trained him. After we trained him, he then set up his own academy and an agency. And now, from having retired, he now earns around 250,000 USD in a year through these two ventures. So all these ventures were born from a simple training that we conducted in 5 days. Then outside this, we've worked with organizations again, which have had challenges in terms of accessing funding because they have never had a model around it. So we've worked with some of these organizations, and then they've received funding from international organizations, both for-profit organizations and non-profit organizations, as well as getting investments coming through into their organizations. It's obviously not been a tough journey because this is a space that normally, like you rightly indicated at the beginning, people really do not understand. If you tell an individual, I remember I visited a couple of leading ministers in some countries. When I indicated to them I trained people how to make money out of sport, it didn't make sense. Like I indicated, we still have perception challenges, we still have knowledge gaps in as far as the sport entrepreneurship space is concerned, but I'm happy to say we've continued to persevere, work, and help leaders really relook at how the commercial value of sport can be exploited. So the services that we generally have as Dominion Sport are threefold. we have what we call the Sport Entrepreneurship Masterclass. It's sort of an intensive training where we bring in an individual, give them the skill sets, try and build their mindset, and then give them the tool sets to use when they go as an individual to run an organization. So after we do that, normally what we then do is we provide mentoring for these individuals for almost a year, trying to make sure that we build them so that the organization becomes a success. Then from there, we have what we call the Sport Business Nest. This is our incubation service. What we do is when we train people, obviously, some people do not necessarily have an organization, but they have ideas. We bring them into our nest. We train them how to structure things, how to start their idea, how to scale it, how to look for capital for their organization, how to look for funding. And then after we see that they've matured, we move them out of the nest and allow them to fly. So it's been very interesting seeing people fly from literally not running an organization to becoming entrepreneurs that run successful organizations. And then lastly, we have what we call the the leadership bootcamp. This is essentially a leadership training platform again, where we spend time training individuals in becoming sport leaders, because we understand in some cases that people run organizations, like we've been discussing, out of passion, but not really having the required leadership skills that would make an organization, or that would make the spaces that they're operating operates to the maximal potential of productivity that we expect. So it's been an interesting journey. It continues to be an interesting journey, and we're looking forward, obviously, to make sure that we touch as many African countries as possible. And definitely looking forward to coming to Kenya, Brian, because that's where you are, and working with your guys in Kenya so that we really push the sport entrepreneurship agenda for Africa, so that Africa really becomes positioned in a better space in as far as really exploiting the commercial value of sport.
Excellent, Mr. Mukurumbira. That's really good, and I look forward to welcoming you to Kenya soon. As you can see from one of our viewers, Kupakwashe Mukurumbira, I'm interested with the training. I want to be a sport leader. Kindly get in touch. Thank you. So I think after this show, we are going to get in touch with some of our viewers, and we can see what we can do. As we have about 10 minutes to go, and I wouldn't miss the opportunity to give Professor Maureen Flores to talk about technology and sports tech in particular, because that's how we actually met at the Colosseum Sports Tech Academy. And she's really passionate, a writer in the sports tech space. So
Well,
for me, the question would be, how important is it to develop technology to support our sports ecosystem? And what are some of the areas we have seen real potential? Yeah, and I say most of the technology products in sports originate from developed sports economies and are rarely suited for underdeveloped or developing markets or emerging markets. What's your take on these, Maureen?
well, I think this is a topic of a seminar itself, but I will try to be brief. Okay, so
Sure.
okay, let's organize my answers and let me think about it. Okay, I believe that investments in technology should be made along with the grassroots operations. It is cheaper and more effective. The new generation will change football, not us, and we have to enable them. So I'm confident that more and more innovation in football will come from grassroots operation. Developing an innovation ecosystem requires partnership. We have to combine efforts. In our case of emerging economies, we should look for alliance, like I said, on exports, in the service, agriculture, manufacturing, because they are usually good in management and they can help find new partners. It is mandatory to be part of an international alliance because we need to exchange experience. That's how we met. Mm-hmm. It is essential to liaison with other sports disciplines. We are not competitors. So Also, about what kind of technology, I would say that now artificial intelligence is something that we have to dive in. But however, sports will face a huge challenge because there is a gap in ITC professionals. And this gap is internationally. This kind of professional now is being disputed with a lot of money and opportunities. So if you don't have something really, solid to offer to an ITC professional, they probably go for another segment of the economy, like agriculture or tourism, or because you need something solid. Or it's either something that's gonna make them as an entrepreneur to make money and innovate it, and become a startup and make Kenya a startup nation like Israel, or he will move away. So going back to the grassroots operation, I believe that every time that we have a group of youth athletes dedicating their time and passion to sports, we have an opportunity to innovate. Sometimes we can start by being users, triers, test beds, and little by little learning to adapt and develop. So what we have to understand is that this is a journey. This is not a sprint. Definitely not a sprint. So, but we have to be creative, not innovative, not entrepreneur. We have to be creative more. We have to be entrepreneur, innovator, and creative. In the case of emerging economies, most of all, we have to be creative. And we are, because we are very resilient. So we have to be creative to find opportunities and to make that happen.
Wow, what a way to come to the, if I can say, the boiling point of this show. We have 5 minutes to go, and it's been really exciting. You can see from the engagement we are getting with our viewers. We have Kipto Mirmet saying we really need this. Maybe we can take another question from Michael Wesala. Oh, sorry, actually, so that's my brother tuning in from the US. Innovation and entrepreneur are normally born out of necessity. How do we create a need for sport, in particular football in Africa, where it's viewed as a pastime rather than an industry? So, my friend Kupakwashe, how can you answer this question?
Okay, so like we've been discussing, the most powerful way for us to then create a need for sport. Sport is actually something that's needed in Africa and that's loved in Africa, particularly football. You don't go to any corner of Africa and don't find kids with a plastic ball kicking a ball around or playing. If you go to any rural community, you would find that the need, particularly for football, is there. But what we then have to master to do is to really create that entrepreneurship space where it's sold and it's put on all the necessary platforms for individuals to really grow it and make sell the commercial value of it to individuals. You need to make sure that. So if you look at like the media industry, say for example, which is the most powerful way for people to get to know sport, you rarely have you have only probably a handful of countries in Africa where you have channels that broadcast football on an entire day basis. Or when you look at our clubs again, how they are structured, you really have them having channels of really making sure that people are able to consume the products that they have. So I think the work then is with us and with us empowering the organizations and the people that are involved within these organizations so that they know and they see this commercial value of the different sports that they are running so that Africa consumes its own products. So the most painful part for me is when you look at the consumption of, say, for example, football in Africa. You throw a stone amongst 4 men in Africa, they will tell you about, if you ask them about Barcelona, Real Madrid, these top leagues out of Africa, they'll tell you the players, including the subs and everyone. But if you ask them, if I ask a man in Zimbabwe about the league in Kenya, they can really answer that. Because the product is not sold. We are consuming other products, but our own products, we are not consuming them, and they are not being sold to us to such an extent that we know what exactly is happening within the African space in as far as football and sport entrepreneurship generally is concerned. So it's our duty to make sure that we transform our organizations, which are football related, which are sport related, so that we sell the commercial value and sell the product of sport, of football, to every corner of Africa, so that we can grow the football ecosystem.
Well, thank you very much for that, Kupakwashe. Another comment from Anwenile says, international ally is very innovative because it offers easy extension of the market AIML, yes, but the club must have been established. So giving credence to Professor Flores' comments there in terms of collaboration, that is very, very important. Anyway,
Well,
go ahead, Professor Maureen
no, no,
Flores.
no. Are you asking me?
No,
Or
no,
you
no, no.
just make my
It was
comment?
just a
Okay.
comment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyway, so we're about at the hour mark and drawing to a close. So I'll take this opportunity to take your closing remarks. Again, thank you very much for taking the time to share your insights with us here at the Football Foundation for Africa. We really, really appreciate. And like you said, technology is another session altogether. So I hope we can work on that soon and do something in that subject. So at this time, I'll welcome your concluding remarks, and we'll start with you, Professor Maureen Flores.
Well, thank you for having me here. It was a pleasure. I have a very close relationship with Africa. I used to work in Kenya, Mozambique, and Angola a couple of years ago from the environmental perspective, not sports. I didn't have Grace at that time yet, but I hope to see you someday in Kenya, and I'm gonna go swimming in Malindi. So
Lovely.
thank you very much for having me here. I'm available. If anyone wants to contact me, please, welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Maureen Flores, for joining us this evening, our first guest from South America, from Brazil. And we look forward to hosting you again soon, not only virtually, but also here in Kenya or in Africa. So you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
My good friend Kupakwashe, God sent, your concluding remarks, please.
Thanks, Brian, for hosting us, and it was obviously a very interesting conversation with the good professor. My parting remarks, obviously, are that Africa is the future of sport business. I believe Africa is the future of sport business. Africa is the future of sport entrepreneurship, and we are obviously, as an organization, Dominion Sport, available to train, equip, and provide all the necessary support that we can to sport organizations across Africa, so that we make Africa better and we position Africa in her rightful place in as far as football business, sport entrepreneurship is concerned. We are available to train, equip sport business leaders, sport entrepreneurs, and we are looking forward to coming to Kenya and engaging the sporting community there in as far as football entrepreneurship is concerned. Thank you for hosting us.
Lovely, Kupakwashe. It was a pleasure. Thank you as well to our guests, our audience today. Thank you for your comments and questions. We hope we were able to take at least most of them. I see there's one more comment that is coming. On your next show on technology, that's somebody saying they're already looking forward to the one on technology. So we'll be sure to organize something here on the Africa Football Business show. Before we wrap up, just a point of information for our supporters here in Kenya, specifically the ones in Eldoret. I will be in Eldoret to talk the business of football this weekend. So I look forward to really interacting with you. Please, the likes of Kipto, I really look forward to having a discussion. I'm just trying to get the screen up. You'll bear with me. One moment. There you go. Yeah, so this weekend, at the invitation of Eldoret Football Club, one of our grassroots football clubs here in Kenya, I will be in Eldoret to talk the football business talk at Kingston Kamkunji grounds. Actually, I'll be there from Saturday for some football. And thereafter, on Sunday, we'll have time to discuss matters football business. And hopefully next time, I will bring Kupakwashe and Professor Maureen Flores with me so that we can conduct some workshops there.
I'll be delighted.
Delighted to be part of that.
Okay.
My pleasure to meet you as well.
Excellent. All right, so before we wrap up completely, just a word of appreciation to our partners, specifically OTB Africa, CBeyond Leadership Forum, Parmas, and lastly, iSport LAN. With iSport LAN, we have a running partnership for those interested in sports business education. They are from very good courses that can introduce you to the business side of sport. And using our code FFA10, you qualify for certain discounts. So take advantage of this. As we say, the challenges we face in Africa actually represent opportunities, and we need people to exploit these opportunities. And education is really vital for us to do this successful. So this weekend we'll be in Eldoret, and next week we are back here on the Africa Football Business Show. Specifically, we'll be looking at women's football and how we can develop women's football in Africa. Again, it's a new area that needs entrepreneurial minds and innovative mindsets. So until then, have a good time. Enjoy your weekends when it comes. Hopefully you'll have a sporting one, and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.